This is update for November 10, 2023, day 625 of the war, end of the date update. Also catch up for November 9 and 8. I'm going to start with a strategic update and just general update, and then I'm going to switch to the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. So as you can see, the first topic is going to be a downgrade. Well, not quite downgrade, but initial sort of phase or step of downgrade of the US credit rating as a government, as a country, by the last remaining credit agency that was keeping US credit rating at the highest level, which is AAA. So you can see here Moody's, they announced that they changed outlook for US credit rating from stable to negative. What this really means is it's just kind of like a transitional phase to go one level down, to really be downgraded. So once this, and this is probably gonna get completed in several months, and they will sort of finally announce downgrade to AA, which is going to be in line with two others. Just as a reminder, Fitch downgraded US just 100 days ago, literally. I was talking about that. It's actually this whole picture from that time. S&P downgraded US quite long time ago. I think it was like 2012 or 2011, really long time ago. So as you can see, this credit rating downgrades are starting to come, a little bit like an avalanche. And the problem with all of this is that the status of reserve currency of the US dollar is actually based on this credit rating. And if this continues, and let's say US gets into double, so now it's AA plus, if it starts to go to AA minus, there will be actually a real FX crisis in the world, because at that point the US dollar will not be sort of capital tool for storing capital, and then that's the biggest, I would say, threat to the US, obviously, because that's the really underpinning of the economic strengths, underpinning for the military strengths and everything. So if US is going to continue on this path, it simply will not be able to afford its military, and then I would say the whole world system will collapse. And that's why Russia is sort of cheerleading, cannot wait for that to happen, because they understand where the true weakness is, and so they just don't have any weapon against the real weapon against the sort of US dollar, and the only way to sort of for dollar to destruct is actually self-destruction from within the US. And this is unfortunately has been going on for a while. Just to give you one number, US Treasury is is in process of borrowing 1.6 trillion US dollars over 6 months. So it's starting from October 1 through first quarter of the coming year. So that's a huge number. It's, if you analyze it, you can just, it's 3.2 trillion. I think when I show the tax collections in the US for US budget, about like 4 trillion. So this is it's just simply totally unsustainable, and simply the world financial capital markets will not tolerate this. Let's put this way, and not to mention, I think this is being picked up recently by financial media, is that the payments or the interest on U.S. governmental debt is really pushing towards 1 trillion. Again, if you think about 4 trillion, that's what you earn. 25% goes just to pay interest. To maintain U.S. military, it's about 900 billion, roughly close to 1 trillion. So between interest, military, and then you have, I think, pension system is another trillion or 1.2 trillion. So there's real problem sort of developing, and I think in 2024 it's going to get even worse. What this may actually do in the long run, it's probably going to be actually a positive outcome for the world, because it will force the world probably to switch to the gold standard. I would say, Russian government doesn't want to do it, Chinese government doesn't want to do it, Japanese doesn't want to do it, European government doesn't want to do it, US government doesn't want to do it. It's just going to happen because of the problems with the US. It will force all capital to be gold based, because simply otherwise you're going to lose it. And that's just probably going to be long-term outcome of all of this sort of realignment that's happening in the world. And that thing is actually going to be for the better for the world in the long run. It's just unfortunately we're going to go through a lot of turbulence in the process. And related to this is that's why there's a problem in the U.S. Parliament, because they realize that there is a problem with the debt, and they don't want to pass this sort of, let's say, generic budget that's sort of kind of like you can spend whatever you want, and they want to go sort of expense by expense item, and that's really obviously there is sort of bureaucratic apparatus in the U.S. They don't want to sort of their credit card to be cut off, and there's this just basically fight between those two forces. But eventually, capital markets will cut off that credit card one way or another. So it's just question of time. It's just becoming more and more visible, and they say that these developments are not going to happen linearly. It's going to be exponentially, and it's will affect Ukraine, because Ukraine already essentially is not getting much. There is very little left in terms of help available, financial help and military help for Ukraine. Remains to be seen how it's going to work out going forward. And I'll discuss that once I discuss the general sort of political situation in Ukraine, which is very tense at this stage. Now let's switch a little bit closer to Ukraine. I'm going to talk a little bit about Russia. Things in Russia also not going well. I just want to give you an example of actually, in some way, probably successful effect of the sanctions, where, and I mentioned this before, Russia has a Gazprom, which is government monopoly on the export of natural gas out of Russia, and because it cannot essentially export natural gas to Europe at this point, or very little, very small amount relative to what it used to be, essentially the company is bankrupt, and it's actually recognized by the stock market. So Gazprom owns, so it's sort of main line of business, natural gas, as I mentioned, but they also own nearly 100% of equity another company called Gazprom Neft, which translates as Gazprom crude oil, and so that arm is tasked simply with development of just purely crude oil, and so the value of that company is larger than value of Gazprom. What this really means is the because Gazprom value of Gazprom includes its own natural gas business and this Gazprom Neft. This and because Gazprom Neft value of Gazprom Neft is higher than Gazprom, what this really means because it's sum of the parts. Gazprom Neft plus natural gas business. This really means that the value of that natural gas business is negative actually. As I said, the company is essentially bankrupt. However, crude oil really allows Russia to survive all of this and essentially survive quite well. Because, as I mentioned, crude oil is essentially liquid gold. Effectively, it's equivalent to gold, and no sanctions. The way the sanctions are done, they actually help Russia. Other news out of Russia is it seems that they starting to develop problems with communication equipment with the internet backbone. That's mostly data centers, servers, just purely communication equipment. Because the speed of internet is slowly deteriorating in Russia starting from 2023. So it dropped by about 5 to 7% since the beginning of the year. And this is obviously, not critical yet, but it shows that technological sanctions do work. It will take really long time for them to work, and it's just at the very initial stages. But there is some effect out of that. Now I'm going to switch into the mobilization in Russia. Russian government continues mobilization. They just announced number that as of November 9, they mobilized 410,000 people. How many of them sort of volunteers is not disclosed, but last time I think it was like 85,000. So out of the number of 385,000, that was actually beginning of October. So probably 90,000, something like that, 95,000 of them, so-called volunteers. But the point is over this month, Russian government mobilized additional 25,000 people into the army, to the front line in Ukraine. One clear sign is the speed of mobilization is really going down. So Russian government has picked up sort of low-hanging fruit, people who are sort of more willing to do that, and so on. And now it's going to be more and more progressively more challenging for Russian government to mobilize new people into the Russian army. However, what this really at the moment gives Russian government, Russian military, is they essentially have close to 600,000 people on the battleground in Ukraine or around Ukraine, because it also includes Belarus, where there are some Russian troops, not small amount, but still. Then also direct border between Ukraine and Russia. They need to keep some troops there, but the whole sort of the whole number is close to 600 at this point, which is not far away from the number of troops Ukraine has. So the numerical advantage of the Ukrainian army is quickly going away, and it's probably gonna actually eventually, if this war continues for another year, the numerical advantage of Ukrainian army will actually flip, and it will be smaller than the Russian army, which is how it's supposed to be, simply because Russia is larger country population-wise. So it was in a way aberration that Ukrainian army was larger than Russian, but the trend is very clear. Ukrainian army will be dwindling, becoming smaller relative to the Russian one. And the only way for Ukrainian army then to sort of survive and be successful is quality, not quantity. Ukrainian army will never be able to do anything with quantity, and it was not able so far, as you can see. And that is actually sort of a segue to the situation in Ukraine. Political situation in Ukraine is extremely tense. There is almost expectation that there will be something, I don't know, coup or 1917 attempt. I don't think it will be true 1917 moment, but something close, something what maybe Russia had in June. Something similar may happen in Ukraine. It is a sad situation, very tense. It's becoming very clear that the strategy of Ukrainian president and political top is heading nowhere. It's actually heading towards disaster, and that's why it sort of increases tension with the military top, and it's all natural process. It's not because of person A doesn't like person B or whatever, though they have some personal problems. Doesn't matter. It will be person C, person D. There will be the same situation, simply because objective situation is such that there's a problem and there's no solution to that problem, and sort of the war will force the solution no matter what. So that's that situation inside of Ukraine. As I said, it's extremely tense, and almost like I would say you can feel electricity in the air. In terms of the frontline situation, as just general overview before I actually go to the specific sections, there is essentially fight between Russian command and Ukrainian command for the initiative. I wouldn't say that initiative is clearly in either hand. There are areas such as, for example, Avdiyivka, where Russian command is definitely clearly driving situation. At the same time, the situation along Dnipro River is where Ukrainian command is driving situation. So it's in a way, both sides are attempting to basically shift the situation in their favor. I would say that strategically, if Ukrainian side is more successful along the Dnipro River, that has really strategical implications for the war, versus the situation around Avdiyivka. It's purely a tactical situation, and it's more going to be propaganda victory for Russia, just to prove the point that Ukrainian side is not capable of successfully not only doing offenses, but even holding the ground or defending the territory. And that obviously will be used in the West as a reason to cut off financial and military support, which, as I mentioned before, situation with the U.S. is becoming increasingly difficult for Ukraine, and that's actually add more fire to extremely tense situation already in Ukraine, and that might be a spark for something. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's the probability of something happening is pretty high, I would say. Okay, now let's walk through the front line, and I'm going to do it in a clockwise fashion, as I always do, starting from very north. Situation along the state border remains more or less the same. Nothing sort of unusual there. The only thing is, I would say, is for the first time is actually Ukrainian forces managed to attack Russian plant that's manufacturing gunpowder. It's here in Kotovsk, where I'm showing, so it's not close, but Ukraine used Ukrainian forces used UAVs, attack UAVs to basically blow up that gunpowder plant. Don't know the damage exactly, but probably significant. I could imagine. So this is the first. I would say the reason I'm mentioning it because it's actually something that's directly helpful for the front line. It's not going to affect things immediately, not in a month, not in a two, but over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, this probably will affect Russia's ability to have enough, let's say, shells and everything, and including even the cartridges or bullets, whatever. I'm not sure what's the proper English word. But again, so this is for the first time where it's not just propaganda purposes, where there are attacks against, let's say, Moscow and some buildings there, which is completely waste of resources and useless. This is actually something that's directly helping defending Ukraine. Now let's move to North Lugansk front line. Things here are more or less the same. Russian tactical attacks, pressure remains, is basically direction towards Kupiansk. That's a general goal for the Russian command. They really would like to get control over Kupiansk if possible. Again, things so far remain stable. Again, and it's just tactical pressure from the Russian side. Now let's look at North Donbass front line. The northern sector remains quiet. The southern is essentially initiative right now, actually here in Russian hand. They continuing their attacks to capture lost ground around Klishivka and Avdiyivka here. So far, they did not get anywhere. Again, this is all tactical attacks. It's not anything major or strategic. Now let's look at situation around on central Donbass front line. The main obvious area, as I mentioned, is Avdiyivka, and here there is basically meeting engagement, Russian attacks, Ukrainian counterattacks. There's a lot of going on. However, net effect is sort of similar to World War I, where there's a lot of losses on both sides, but there's essentially no advances, and Ukrainian forces are not successful in counterattacking. Russian forces at this point are not successful in attacking. Again, the front line, as you can see, was stabilized with a lot of effort by Ukrainian command. If there were no reinforcements thrown here, and especially 47 Brigade, which has better quality in terms of motivation, things probably would not be so positive here on this front line. And this was where it's all started, early October. And essentially the whole sort of advance for the Russian side is this small bridgehead that they develop on the other side of the railroad. Essentially, that's it, that they so far being contained and they not able to breach in a meaningful way out of this bridgehead here. Now let's move to the situation along the Zaporizhya front line. Things here are quiet from Ukrainian side, mostly Russian tactical attacks to basically recapture lost ground. That's it. It's just nothing. It's becoming sort of quiet sector of the front line, generally speaking. Now let's look at the situation along the Dnipro River, because I think it's becoming sort of interesting, let's put it this way. I mentioned before that Ukrainian forces, they established bridgehead in the village Krynky. This is this village. And then they started advancing into this forest that's here, where sort of front line I don't have clear visibility. but the one point is they have not sort of decisively broke out through Russian defenses at this point. At least there is no any confirmation of that. So that's one point of this. The other sort of somewhat positive for Ukrainian side is that Russian military command had to throw this 10th Special Forces Brigade to stop Ukrainian advance. The reason I'm saying it's positive for Ukraine because this is effectively like a last-ditch effort by Russian command to contain advances of Ukrainian forces here. As you can imagine, Special Forces Brigade is much better motivated than regular Russian troops. They are much smaller. They're not designed to do this frontal fight and frontal counterattacks, which they've been used at this point. And it's essentially this is high value resource that's not supposed to be used as sort of like line infantry in the front line, and they are being used as infantry and essentially destroyed, which shows desperation on the Russian side on the Russian command side. So apparently the motivation in the regular Russian units there is totally not there. I mentioned before that there was a lot of problems with the 205th Brigade, with its commander. I think they changed a new commander there. Apparently it's not much better. Don't have much information about the new one, but things are simply not going well for the Russian side here at this point. They always can plug the hole by bringing more troops, technically, but for whatever reason, everything probably tied up on other sections of the front line. So they have thrown this sort of like fire rescue team, as I said, as last ditch effort. And Russia has generally just about, I think, 8 or 10 of the Special Forces brigades. Just for those, I actually discussed them long time ago in 2022, I think in May. But they are actually smaller in size. They're not typical size because they are not developed for fighting frontal, warfare. They are usually about 500-600 people, could be even up to 1200, 1300, but they are extremely small because you don't have that many quality people in the first place. And so again, at this point, this is being wasted, this resource, and from that perspective, it's positive for Ukraine, and this probably gives some hope that there is maybe eventually will be breakout from this bridgehead. But again, as a whole, I would say the way it's done by Ukrainian command is not done well, but at this point it's sort of fight of, as I said before, two Soviet armies where nothing is done right by either one. So it's a question which one is doing worse, essentially. And at this moment, looks like Russian side is doing worse than Ukrainian side. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye bye.